And we've got rounding here that we're going to talk about. Again, page 3 or 4, loose leaf paper if you run out of room there. Today, looking at analyzing given numbers to be able to round those at different places. Okay, so definitely important to know this because there's going to be a lot of times in chemistry where you've got to figure out how to round a specific number. So why do we need to round? What's that? What does that amount to? And we do that all the time. So like, what time is it? It's about 2:30. If it's 2:31, that's still 2:30ish. How old are you? Usually we don't go into how many months old we are. Usually we just estimated about a certain age in years. How fast are you driving? Usually 5 or 10 miles per hour is what we look at, but sometimes you do have to be a little bit more precise. Um, and then how much is Bill Gates worth? A few $1 billion. Again, not something that we really spend too much time getting really focused on. How many people are in the world? You've got about 7.5, 8 billion people. Round that. Could we know a little bit more of those digits? Probably. It just a lot of times isn't helpful for us. And then how much is the national debt? How much do you weigh? Again, these are questions that we usually estimate those numbers. We usually round those numbers. So why are we going to round the number? If you are asked to cut a board at 18.026 or 02936 inches long, when you're cutting that, if you're in shop class or you're a carpenter working on a house, you do not need to know that many decimal places. It's just not necessary. There are probably fields where it is necessary, but usually it's not. So we would round that um, to 18 inches. We just don't need to be that precise. What speed are you going? We don't measure that very precisely because, again, usually as long as you're within reason on the speed limit, then it's totally fine. And then how many people in the world? It's something that we actually can't measure entirely precisely because of we can't go out and actually count all of the people. It's just too many people to be able to do that with. So instead, we round the number that we have. We don't want to act like we know that number more precisely than we actually do. So how do we round? First, we're going to round all 4 of these to whole numbers. This 12.32, the whole number, means that we're looking at the ones place, and 3 is going to round that. I say round down. I've had plenty of students who say keep it the same. The way that I think about that is when you're looking at a number 12.32, you're trying to figure out what ones place is closer, 12 or 13. And because the 3 is closer to being at 12, that's what we're going to round down to. Again, if you think about that just staying the same, that's totally fine. Our answer would be 12 here. Next, we've got a whole number would mean that we're rounding to that ones place. That 9 is going to make that a 15 because it's closer to 15 than it is to 14. Then 17.49, that's going to round down to 17. And 39.50, the 5 is going to round that 9 up. And the way that I think about that is it rounds it up to 10. Since there's something already in that tens place, that number goes up. So that'll end up being 40. Okay. When we get into significant digits, we'll deal with how do you show which number you rounded to and that sort of information. But for now, that's what you need to be aware of. So the rules, so you've got rounding to a certain digit. So whenever I underline a digit, that means that's the number I want you to round. So here I'm looking at that 7. That 7 is going to round that 0.6 up. So it'll be 1345 point, and instead of 0.6, it'll be 0.7. Then 4 is going to round down to the 0.9. So 849.9 is going to round up. So instead of 0.9, that'll end up being 50.0. Okay, so that's because that 9 rounded up. That meant that it rounded up to 10, but that next number was a 9, so it rounded up to 10 also, which made it 850. Okay, and then here we've got 1,345.678 is going to round. Again, this is something that sometimes I see students struggle with, so let's look at this a little bit more in detail. So we've got 1,345.678. We want to round to the nearest hundreds place. So we've got to think about, is that closer to the 100 above it, which is 1,400, or is it closer to 1,300? And 1,340 is going to be closer to the 1,300. In other words, it's going to round down to 1,300. And then last one here, I've got 8, 5. That 7 is going to round the 5 up to a 6, 0, 0. And then you just put in the placeholders to fill in whatever was after that. So the rules here are going to be 1, find the digit you're needing to round to. Once you do that, if it's the next digit after it is a 4 or less, leave the current digit alone. That's where I say it rounds down. Okay. If the next digit after the one you want to round is greater than 5 or is 5, then you're going to round it up. You're going to put it to the next digit, and then if the digit you're rounding to is to the left of the decimal point, replace all trailing zeros with, or trailing digits with zeros, like we did in the last one, up to the decimal point. And if it's after the decimal, then you get rid of any of the trailing digits. Okay? So round to whole numbers here. Go ahead and pause the video and try that. Okay, again, whole numbers are where we're looking at the ones place. So we've got this 19.62, going to round, we're going to get 20. Whole number here is going to be that 8. The 4 is going to round that down because 4 is less than 5. So that'll end up being an 18 when we round it to the whole number. Then here we've got 9. 5 is going to round that up to a 10, but it's going to do some cascading. So that 10 is going to round that up to 10, and that up. So we're going to end up with 1,000. And remember, if it's to the left of the decimal, then that means that you replace everything afterwards with zeros. Okay, trailing zeros. So then 1,000. Okay. So you try these here. Go ahead and pause the video and try to round these. All right, super cool. So we've got this one here is going to round to 14.65. This one here rounds 19.4 down to 8. Next, we've got 329. That's going to round up to 0.6. This one here, we've got a 9 that's going to round up, so 3845.39 is going to round up to 0.40. Okay. Then we've got that 5 is going to round the 4 up. to a 5. So we've got 1, 4, 6, 5. You replace all trailing digits with zeros since it's to the left of the decimal, so that's going to be 0. So 14,645.382 becomes 14,650. Then we've got here 19480 because we're going to round that down to the 80, and 3299 is going to round that 5 to a 6, change my trailing digits to zeros. And 384, that 9 is going to round the 9 up, which then makes that 5 a 6, so 3846000. Okay. Then in summary, we've got rounding. Why is that important? How to round to a particular digit, and then how to understand when to round up or when to round down. All right. Then from there, go ahead and take your turn. Try out those rounding numbers worksheet.